You are now listening to the Go-Getter Showcase, a weekly podcast highlighting the elements of success within professional and entrepreneurial women from various industries in all walks of life. I'm your host, Lindsay Joseph. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful, marvelous, miraculous day. I am really exhausted for some reason this week. I'm not sure why, but it's early on in the week. I'm tired, and so I will be keeping this relatively short. So today's guest is Nikki Bass. Nikki is a corporate professional, college-level educator, career consultant, and owner of the Corporate Melanin Millennial LLC. Corporate Melanin Millennial LLC brings energy and authority to millennials by utilizing their passions to create a career that they love. Her services include resume writing, career development plans, and more. In this episode, Nikki discusses how she landed most of her jobs that she's held by being bold and audacious in her job search, why she decided to start her own firm and focus on millennials of color, the importance of having a career that you love, and how internships during college play a major role in your ability to find your dream job, and how her childhood love for talking created an avenue to become an educator in addition to her career and business. And so this is another episode just like last week's where we get to talk about things related to education and career and all that good stuff that I love talking about. So I did talk a little bit in this one. I got kind of chatty, just like last week I was super chatty. And so anyways, I'm not going to hold back. Let's just jump right into the episode. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Nikki. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I'm Nikki. I am a career coach from deep South Georgia, currently based in South Carolina.
Great. So tell us about where you are in Georgia, because I'm here in Atlanta. I was in Savannah beforehand, and Georgia is a big state. So tell us about where you really come from in Georgia.
So I'm from a city in South Georgia called Albany, Georgia. Most people haven't heard of it unless they went to Albany State University. And I was there until undergrad. And then I moved to Valdosta, Georgia. And then for grad school, Savannah, Georgia. And then to Columbus, Georgia for work. And now I am in Columbia, South Carolina, which is the capital of South Carolina, and love it here. We've been here about a year.
Great. So you've kind of been all over the state of Georgia. That's great. So that being said, tell us about this education that had you kind of bouncing around the state and what your educational background is.
So I started off undergrad at Valdosta State as a psychology major. In my first semester in Intro to Psychology, I got a D, first D ever. And I was taking public speaking at the time and realized I loved it. My parents have said my whole life I never shut up, and I'm finally getting paid to do what I got in trouble for. And so as soon as I finished undergrad, less than 2 weeks later, I was off to Savannah, Georgia, where I ended up studying professional communication and leadership. So I was able to continue on that public speaking track because my undergrad is in public relations, and continue on and do professional communication and leadership, which I fell in love with because it mixes together a lot of the things that I really enjoy.
Great. So tell us a little bit about kind of after you finished undergrad, were you working while going to grad school? Did you have a career after you started graduate school, after going right into your master's degree program? Tell us about how your career trajectory aligns with your education.
So coming out of undergrad, I was the person who knew exactly what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So I started reaching out to various departments at Armstrong State where I got my master's and telling them, hey, I'm coming to your school. Are you looking for a graduate assistant? And so the director of marketing was the first person to respond, and she let me know that they didn't have any openings for a graduate assistant, but she'd keep me looped in if she heard anything. And about 2 months later, while I was still in undergrad, she calls me, hey, the person who was our graduate assistant got mono. Would you mind coming up for an interview? I went up for an interview the next weekend, and by Wednesday, I was hired. So I went straight into grad school. I moved early so that I could work. And I worked there as a graduate assistant in the marketing office, building websites, creating collaterals, writing press releases. And while I was there, I realized graduate assistants, while we get our tuition paid, they don't pay that much. So I worked at a call center for a little while, and call centers are difficult places. And then about halfway through grad school, I was set to graduate December of 2016. Around February of 2016, I knew there was a small company in Columbus that I knew I wanted to work for. So I found a recruiter on LinkedIn and sent her an email and said, "Hey, I love your company. These are all the skills I have, and you should hire me." And within the next day, they had scheduled an interview with me. And within the next couple of months, I was hired. So I started my first career where I'm still at that company in different various roles while I was still in grad school. I'm relocated to Columbus, Georgia, and it's kind of just been uphill from there.
Great. So, I mean, most people, when they apply for a job, they apply through this job portal and they get really upset because it's like their resume goes into a black hole. So I was like the last generation of like paper resumes when you would actually fill it out in person and you would talk to a hiring manager while you were there and then hand off your application or your resume or whatever it may have you because you were applying in person at that point. So the person would actually remember your name. So now people get so frustrated because it's so easy to sit at home and fill out these job applications. Sometimes they're just easy apply and it's like you just send a resume and that's it. So talk about the importance of actually sending an email in order to get a job that you want.
So, what most people fail to realize is that 80% of jobs are filled by somebody referring you internally. So, that only leaves 20% of jobs open for the cold applications. So, my job in grad school, I went and physically took my resume up to the office. And even though they said, "Oh, we don't take resumes in person," they called me even though I never applied online because they remembered that. And so it's the same thing with sending emails. People are able to put a name to the application when it comes in, or they're able to refer somebody. And now networking and building those relationships is so important. It can literally jumpstart your career. And so I think people have to get out of those comfort zones of, "I'm just going to do this application," and send an email sometime, make a phone call sometimes. Even if you think it may be taboo, at least they'll know who you are when the application does finally go through. And you mentioned the easy apply. We got to stop using the easy apply. It's important to physically go to the company's website and apply versus easy apply on LinkedIn or quick apply on Indeed. Go directly to the source and fill out the longer application. They have more information about you than that easy apply.
Exactly, exactly. So I know that we've talked before. So like I've said before, I'm a recruiter. So I'm like a so pure headhunter type of person. So I don't even post the jobs that I actually am working on because I know that, probably 90% of the people who are actually going to apply are just complete crap. So it's just like, I know for a fact on the actual like professional recruiting side that, those job postings a lot of the time, it's very hard to sift through good candidates. And so, I really do appreciate the advice that you're giving about, go directly to the source. And even if it might seem a little bit, taboo or might be a little bit uncomfortable, it makes it memorable because I definitely have people who reach out to me about particular jobs too, and they may not be a fit, but they're in my inbox. I acknowledge the fact that they actually, take the time to send me over their resume. They'll say, and they might not even necessarily be a fit for any of the jobs that I'm currently working on, but they'll do the same thing. They'll send me their resume, say, "Hey, I'm looking to come to Georgia," or "Hey, I see you work in a company out of Massachusetts. I'm thinking about relocating there. Please keep me in mind for these jobs." So it definitely is is really good advice because, again, things just get so clogged up in resume portals. And a lot of the times, like, even as an applicant, I see myself that my resume is sitting in submission status for 6 months, meaning the person has never even looked at my resume because recruiters themselves are so bogged down with everything else going on in the organization and doing what they need to do to get the people in the door. And a lot of the times they're posting jobs because it's more of a formality. Almost like a cover letter at this point in time. The only reason why you even have, like, you submit cover letters is A, it's a formality, but B, also because it helps you with kind of like that keyword search that comes up sometimes if they are looking through their internal database. Like, most recruiters who are looking at over 100 resumes a day, they're not going to sit there and read an entire resume, let alone actually a cover letter too.
Absolutely.
And I explain that to people, you know, there's a reason and there's a method for writing those things and getting those things like submitted to a client, but it's not for them to read it word for word. It's a marketing tool. So one of the other things that you said, and this is probably a great segue, one of the other things that you said is that you're also a career coach. So tell us a little bit about your career coaching practice and how you got started.
Yeah, so I'm a career coach and owner at Corporate Melanin Millennial LLC, and I've been officially and licensed doing it since November of 2018. And I hope my focus is helping millennials get out of that I have to have a job to pay bills routine and realizing you can have a job that you love while also paying the bills. So this entails going into a deep dive of goals. And what I often have people do is write down all of the job options they think they'd be happy at and then go back and saying, "Oh, I wouldn't like this one because X. I wouldn't like this one because Y." And then once you have that list of 7, finding out what skills you need to apply for those jobs. And a lot of the times it helps people realize, "Oh, I thought I wanted to be a counselor, but I realized the skills required suck, and I don't want to do that anymore." And so that's my primary focus, especially through coaching. But it's also creating resumes that get seen and not stuck behind that ATS, that automated tracking system. And so, how I got started career coaching. So, what's funny is since I was in high school, people would ask, "Can you do my resume? Can you do my resume?" And my mom would always recommend me to people. And I was charging like $10 a resume. And I realized I do this a lot and people are getting jobs. I like doing it. Why not get paid for something I like? And that's where career coaching kind of took off because people were constantly asking advice and it worked for me. And that's how Corporate Melanin Millennial got started.
Right. So when you talk about corporate melanin millennial, that in itself kind of signifies who exactly you're targeting in your audience. So tell us about why you decided to name your company that, brand your company as such, and target those particular type of people.
Yes. So we, of course, corporate is because I work primarily with people in corporate America. I've kind of transitioned out and I've been working with nurses, a lot of nurses lately, and people in public health in the government sector. But melanin comes from my primary demographic and my target audience is men and women of color. This can be of any color. So, as far as any person of color background. And of course, millennials is my key target because we're now the generation that is taking over the workforce. We are the primary people in corporate America right now, but we weren't taught how this whole corporate America thing works. We were taught you go to work, you go home. There's so much more to it now than it used to be because you're with these people 2,000 hours a year. Of course, relationships will start forming and friendships. And I teach people kind of how to navigate those waters, but also to get into a role based on the things you want to do, not just based on my parents said I got to get a job so I can pay bills.
Right. And that's so important. And I teach that to people too. And I love how you said you're with these people, 2,000 hours a year. And I say that all of the time. If the average American, a 40-hour work week is what we consider to be quote unquote standard, but because so many people are salaried in corporate, that 40-hour work week, I think on average ends up being like 48 hours. You know, you think about the people who actually do work 40 hours versus the people who work 50 and 60 hours, and you bring that in the middle of everyone. So the average American is working 48 hours. They're working basically 6 days a week. And so if you're spending that much time at work, and then you think about the time that you're spending asleep, which is probably, hopefully, like, you know, a third of your life, it's supposed to be, but hopefully that's probably like the next biggest time-consuming activity you're doing. Think about how much time that is you spending with children. Are you spending with your spouse? Are you spending with your friends? Are you spending doing leisure activities? And so when it comes to your work, it's so important for your overall wellness, for you to enjoy what you're doing, for you to like what you're doing, for you to be talented at what you're doing, for you to fit into the company culture, for you to feel like you're building real relationships at work. Because the truth of the matter is you're probably spending more time with the person who sits next to you at work than you are with your partner in life.
Absolutely.
So it's so important for you to really love what you do and enjoy what you're doing. The other thing too is coming out of college, that first 10 years of salary history predicts what you're going to make over a lifetime, because after a decade of being in the workforce after college, you're probably 32, 34, maybe 33. Excuse me, 32 to between 34. And you're going to end up making the most at the age of 45. And so that first 10 years really determines what you're going to make over the course of your entire career. And so you really need to think about your very first job and what each job after that means for you and means for the rest of your career. It's not just, I need a job, like you said at the beginning, I need a job because I need to get a job, because I need to pay these bills, I need to pay back my student loans, this, that, the next thing. You really need to plan everything out.
And of course, that's okay, because we do have to pay bills and we do have to do these things. But in that process, continue to look and reach for the goals that you set for yourself. Hire a career coach or make use of the resources that you have. So many colleges have career centers that have opportunities and job boards that are available to their alumni. Because once you get consistent or complacent in a role or in a situation, then it's highly unlikely you're going to change it.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that tends to be one of the most underused resources in an actual college. And you think about it, it's supposed to be like you went to college to get a career, but a lot of people see college as just being a thing that they're supposed to do and not necessarily as a career planning phase. Like that's the first step of your career planning, is when you're thinking about going to college. Unfortunately, so many people think of it so backwards that they think of, okay, I'm in college because this is what society or my family told me that I need to do. And so I'm going to figure it out after I can get my degree. And a lot of times I'm not saying necessarily that it's too late, but there's so many other people across this country, across the world, graduating the same year as you, getting the same degree as you. What is it that makes you stand out? And if you don't make yourself stand out and really aggressively pursue your career coming right out of college, you're starting very far behind, and you don't even realize how far behind you are until 2-3 years after you graduate, and you're trying to find like a really good job, and you're like, okay, it's time for me to put my degree to use.
Yes. And so this is also where I am a humongous advocate for internships, because internships, and people always say, I don't want to work for free, but that internship allows you to graduate with the 2 years of experience that entry level positions are asking that you have, and you were able to get that in place of a class. Most colleges allow you to get an internship in place for class credit. Taking advantage of those things and the remote internship opportunities that are available now allows you to have experience out the gate.
Exactly. And I tell everybody that. And sometimes, you know, college students might have like a part-time gig making $11 or $12 an hour part-time. And for them, it's like, I can't sacrifice the money that I am making, but you don't understand how much more money are you putting into your student loan, paying that back, or how much money are you spending attending college. They don't think about it as an investment at that point in time, even though it's probably going to be the biggest investment that they make into their career. And aside from, you know, purchasing a home sometimes sometime in the future, hopefully, it might be one of the biggest, most expensive things that you ever purchase in your life. And they don't understand how do you really maximize that investment, because they're just looking at it as this is something that, society says that we're all supposed to do. So, it'll all work out in the end.
Yes, but it's also, they were never taught. So many people in the millennial age range are the first generation college students. They didn't have parents or grandparents who went to college. And when that's the case, who's supposed to tell them? Of course, their parents probably worked in corporate America, and that's cool. But working there, skipping that 4-year stage for a first generation student, they cannot know a lot.
Right. And so I think that first gen thing is really profound when it comes to millennials of color, which is obviously the demographic you target. So I'm originally from the Northeast. I'm from the suburbs of Boston. I grew up around basically mostly all white people, right? And my experience is that even with them, a lot of them are second gen college students or college graduates, right? And the problem with that they encounter a lot of times, or I'm also a second gen college student too. And so I guess including myself in that, the problem that we encounter is that our parents were that generation where they went to college and they got a good job with benefits, with pension, with this, that, the next thing, just because they had a college degree. Now, when you have so much of the population being educated, we're more educated than ever in this country. And so it's almost like an oversaturation of college degrees and bachelor's degrees, right? Where you have so many of these bridge programs to master's degrees just because, that's how you really stand out now, is getting a master's degree. And even that, I feel like in the future is really not going to be standing out. I mean, every college offers an MBA, which is one of the most sought after master's degrees. And so getting back to my point is that the advice that a lot of us got was just go to college, you'll get a job afterwards. And I feel like so many people have followed that path and they failed because they didn't plan out how the rest of their career is going to go after they get that college degree, because they were just told that college degree is important and that's how I'm going to live a good, comfortable life. That's not the truth anymore, 20 years after our parents graduated from college.
Absolutely. Things have changed so quickly. You'll rarely find a company now that offers a pension, let alone benefits the first day. The benefits will start in 60 days, maybe 30 days for some. But even that, for somebody who needs those benefits, can be a hindrance.
Absolutely. So I know that you are an educator. So talk about, why you decide to teach online courses and, kind of what it does for you professionally as well, since you have a full-time job and a business on the side. What do you get out of teaching?
So I knew when I was in public speaking classes that one day I was going to teach this. I like to talk. I like to talk a lot. It's the only thing I got in trouble for as a kid. And when I finished my master's, I was like, I'm going to be a professor. Do I want to go back to school? I don't know. So I realized that teaching entry level courses I could do with a master's as long as I had relevant experience. And so I did training on a corporate level for a while in various roles. And so when a position came over open to teach public speaking, I jumped at it. I was really surprised when I heard that, because at the time I was 23, which meant most of my students, because it was a school dedicated to veterans or focused on veterans, would be older than me, which I thought would hinder me, but it actually did not. And it worked out very well. So I teach public speaking, technical writing, and technical communications. And I love it. It's amazing to be in front of a room and you're able to be yourself while also teaching what people really want to know, because in every facet of life, people have to know how to speak in public. There's not a job role where you don't have to know at least a little bit how to speak in public.
That's so true. One of the biggest skills that employers are looking for is just general communication. Whether it is speaking and being able to present to other people, whether it's being able to communicate cohesively with your team, whether it's, you have a staff that you need to manage and you obviously have to communicate to properly manage them. And a lot of employers feel like people are just lacking basic communication skills. And so I think that you definitely hit the nail on the head. And so, you've talked a lot about what you've done professionally, but a question I ask all of my guests, because It's really important for me to see my guests, or for I feel like my audience to see my guests as human beings who can kind of overcome anything no matter what life throws at them. So tell us a little bit about a pivotal moment in your life that created you to be the woman and the entrepreneur and the professional that you are today.
Geez, that's deep. That was a really deep question that I don't know.
I know, but at the same time too, you know what, we all have a story that we want to tell, or a story that's going to inspire other people, and that's why I asked the question.
So let me think about that for a second, because what defines me in life and made me the person I am today is going to be very different from what defines me professionally. So I'll say, as far as what defined me personally, my papa, who's my granddad, always told me the story of one of my cousins, his name was RJ, was sitting in the front seat one day and I was in the back seat and I had to be like three. And my cousin was talking and I said, RJ, can you please shut up and let me talk some? And my granddad said from that day, I never stopped talking. And even now, I have family members who say, I always knew that mouth was going to make you money. So I have to say that moment is probably what defined me personally.
Girl, I feel like that's my son. I tell everyone all the time, as much as this kid argues with me, he better be a lawyer and he better buy me like a really nice car with all that lawyer money when he when he gets rich. You know what I mean? Some kids, that's just, they have that aptitude, and I feel like with kids who talk a lot, sometimes they can be obnoxious, but at the same time too, a lot of their intelligence comes out too. So like you said, like your family probably wasn't fond of that mouth of yours, but they all knew that, okay, Nikki has potential based on the things that she's talking about. So talk about a little bit of when you would talk, like, was it you were super inquisitive? Was it that you just chatted on and on and on about things? Like, what kind of things were you talking about?
So it was definitely a mixture of everything. So I was at 6. You always tell kids don't talk to strangers. So I would go up to people and say, hey, are you a stranger? Because I knew that I couldn't talk to them if they were. And then in class, I'd have straight A's, but I could never get a satisfaction or honor roll because I was talking to everybody in the classroom. I initially swore, because when you're talking about your son, I swore that I was going to be a lawyer. And I interned at a law firm when I was 16. And I realized they don't talk for fun. I don't like this. So I've always been running my mouth. I'd always ask people why. But why can't I do that? Because I said so, but why do you say so?
Girl, I can't believe you just said they don't talk for fun.
It's not for fun. They were
I
so
know.
stressed out, and I realized that I didn't want that for my life at 16, and I instantly was done.
Right, right. So one of the things that you also mentioned too, and let's kind of bring it back to what we were talking about earlier, is you talked about the fact that you were talking about how important internships are for job experience. So, and you also talked about how it's important to really have a job that you love. So, think about the path that you would have gone on. You probably wouldn't have been a psychology major if you're trying to get into law school. You'd probably be either a pre-law major or a philosophy major. And philosophy and psychology are like on the two ends of the spectrum of, like, I guess, social science or whatever it may have you. And so, think about where you would be had you actually followed your original career path to be a lawyer. Like, what do you think would have looked like for you right now?
So if I would have followed my original career path, I definitely would have been a lawyer. I took the classes in high school. We had pre-law classes in high school. I took all of them. That's the reason I interned in the law firm in the first place. And it easily just could have been because they were stressed out public defenders, which could have been why they were so stressed. But 16-year-old me didn't realize that. And I'm sure that by now I'd be a lawyer, but I probably wouldn't have gone to Audacious State if I was studying law. I probably would have went to a school with an actual law program, which meant I wouldn't have met my husband. So I think in general, I'm glad that it didn't work out. I couldn't imagine working those super long weeks or having to defend somebody that I think is actually guilty or even prosecute somebody that I thought was innocent.
Right. And being a lawyer, that's definitely a job where your job comes before, your morals sometimes because, you might know that somebody's guilty of a horrific crime and your job is not necessarily to get them off. Sometimes it's just to make sure that they have basic human rights. And sometimes your job is to get them off, if there's not enough evidence that is pressing enough to say, this person is definitely guilty and there's no way around it. So as we kind of start wrapping up, what else do you want people to know about you?
So I think one of the things I want people to know about me, so separating me from my business, just me, I am like extremely optimistic. Like the happy, positive person you hear on the podcast today is actually how I am about 15 of my 16 waking hours a day. And that's primarily because I think it's important to be positive because the positive energy you put out is absolutely the positive energy that you receive. And I think the same goes for negative energy. And our world is so negative right now. We have to try to be part of the positivity in order for the world not to be overtaken by negativity.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So as we start to conclude, tell us about where we can find you on social media, what's your contact information, how do we reach out to you if we need some of your services?
Absolutely. So if anybody's looking for career coaching, LinkedIn changes, resume changes, I can be found at corporatemelaninmillennial.com as well as Nikki at corporatemelaninmillennial.com. The business name is all of my social media handles, and I can also be reached on my personal social media handle, and that's underscore K Nicole. So underscore KNIKOLE_.
Great. And lastly, tell our audience a piece of advice that you would give somebody like you, like a younger version of you. So somebody who might have been born in this small city, kind of rural and country, got their degree and, continue to go on for a master's degree, got their dream job, started their own company, and kind of does whatever they want to professionally and also helps people achieve that as well. What kind of advice would you give to a younger version of yourself?
So for a younger version of myself, I definitely tell them to stop focusing on what everybody else expects from you and stop focusing on what everybody else wants for you and figure out what you want for yourself. Come up with a list of things you know you want to do and you know you want to be and create an action plan and go from there. You're not stuck in anybody else's box. So that would definitely be the advice I'd give the younger version of myself.
Great. That's amazing. So thank you so much for being on the show, Nikki. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Go-Getter Showcase. Please make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out the Greater Now membership program for a number of perks, including a bonus semi-exclusive podcast episode, as well as our rewards program where you can earn points for engaging with our content. You can find that at www.mygreaternow.com/membership. Until next time, take care.